More than one person died that evening. On that cruel, fateful day, nearly 2 millennia ago, the son of a carpenter, a Nazarene, the self-proclaimed Son of God, and the self-evident Son of God, was nailed to a Roman cross. Yet, there were two beside him, two sin-hardened criminals. One of them even dared mock Jesus as he lay hanging on the cross, saying, "If thou art the Son of God, save us and save yourself." And the other thief, probably lost in contemplation of his life of emptiness and sin, but with labored breath, coming to the rescue, as it were, of the Son of God, and saying in Luke chapter 23, "We deserve this punishment because of the deeds of our past life. But this man has done nothing wrong." He goes on to say, "Jesus, Lord, remember me when thou comest into thy kingdom." My friends, in other words, the thief was saying, we deserve to die. This is the just reward for our past errors, which are just so unpardonable in this world. But this man, does he deserve death? He does not look like he's done anything wrong. As the thief watched Jesus die, he somehow realized that maybe this death was not to be in vain. Was the death of the cross such a fitting end to the illustrious life of this Messiah? In his dying breath, he gazed upon Christ and said in few, measured words, "Lord, I believe that death will not bind you to the grave. I know you will do as you said. I want to be part of the kingdom that you will one day usher in. I have exhausted my life on this planet. I have taken life into my own hands, and here I hang with the appropriate punishment for my life of sin. Lord, I give myself to you. Save me from myself." Yes, 3 men died that evening. But that number somehow doesn't capture the magnitude of what happened that day. The Apostle Paul, looking back at the crucifixion, says in Galatians chapter 2, verse 20, "I am crucified with Christ. Nevertheless, I live." In other words, Paul is saying, I was to die on the cross that evening. Yet, I have been spared. Like the thief on the cross, he knew the end of his life of bigotry and untamed passion was to lead to death. Paul had taken his life into his own hands, and we know also that he had taken the life of many others. In other words, we could call him a spiritual criminal deserving of death. On the other side of the fall, on his way to Damascus, he knew that the old lease of his life had run out. Yet Paul was given a chance to live again. He continues in Galatians chapter 2 and says, "The life that I now live in the flesh, I live by faith in the Son of God who loved me and gave himself for me." And we also understand that Paul was given a chance to live. He was given a chance for Christ to author a new chapter in his life story, and he ever kept this fresh in his mind. The same Paul in 2 Corinthians chapter 5 verse 17 says, if any man is in Christ, he is a new creature. All things have passed away, and behold, all things have become new. Brothers and sisters, weren't there more than 3 casualties that night? Did Christ really die just for himself? As the world contemplates the inexhaustible theme of the death and the resurrection of Jesus Christ, shouldn't our cry be the same as the thief that evening? Or even as the Apostle Paul a few years later? At the foot of the cross, who else do you see hanging in the person of Christ? Are we so full of ourselves that we dare try to mock the Son of God like the other thief that evening? To say that Christ, this sacrifice, is in vain? Christ laid down his life that we may realize the futility of life as it is. What does life mean to you today? Is it more about self-pleasing or God-pleasing? Is it more about self-preservation over self-surrender? Remember, if we hold on to our lives with tight fists, it will run away like dripping sand. You remember Jesus once said in Matthew 16 verse 25, for whosoever shall save his life will lose it, and whosoever will lose his life for my sake shall find it. The cross of Christ today is the point of transition between death to self and spiritual rebirth. At the foot of the cross, we realize who we really are and the wages of our past ways. Friends, let go of the life that Christ died for and live again in his resurrection. The need to spend 1 thoughtful hour a day contemplating on the life and sacrifice of Christ is vital and urgent. As we dwell on his great sacrifice daily, you know what happens? Our confidence in him grows. Constant, genuine love is replaced. If we would be saved at last, we must learn the lesson of penitence and humiliation, our humiliation at the foot of the cross. Let our prayer ever be, Lord, save me. Save me from myself. And like Paul, one day, let this be our experience. I'm reading from Philippians chapter 1, verse 21. For me to live is Christ, and to die is gain. I'd like to leave you with this thought, friends. If we are alive today, it is because of Christ who lives within us. Let us not bring self back into the equation. Let us spend every day 1 thoughtful hour at least at the foot of the cross. Let us realize that that death was for you and for me.